What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. On today's video, I have another shoe review for you, and I have another shoe review of an up-tempo plated trainer. As I've said it before, and I am sure I'm going to say it again, but this seems to be like the fastest growing segment in running shoes. Like not quite race day, but you know, fast enough to train in, and then you can step it up for race day with the super premium materials. Guys, today I am reviewing the SALOMON SPECTUR 2. Let's get into it. Alright, welcome back. Thanks for sitting through the intro. Now, before we get started, I do just want to say that SALOMON was good enough to send me this pair of the SPECTUR 2 for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you are going to be able to pick up a pair of the SALOMON SPECTUR 2 for $170. And of course, I'll place links in the show notes below in case you want to pick up a pair for yourself. So let's get started with specs. And the SALOMON SPECTUR 2 has 38.5 in the heel, 30.5 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. Now, SALOMON claims that in a US men's size 9, the SPECTUR 2 will tip the scale at 8.8 ounces or 250 grams, but in my size, a US men's size 12.5, it'll tip the scale at 10.5 ounces or 297 grams. And you heard me right. In SALOMON, I wear a US men's size 12.5. So in my experience, I find that SALOMON just fits a little big, but I do wear the same size in SALOMON as I do in Hoka, as I do in New Balance. So take that for what it's worth. Now, of course, as I've already said, there's a lot of competition, right? This is one of the most popular segments in running shoes at the moment. And of course, if we are talking about competition for the SPECTUR 2, we have to look at the ASICS Magic Speed 4. Now, the Magic Speed 4 will also cost you $170, same price as the SPECTUR 2. And the Magic Speed 4 also has an 8mm drop, but it's a little higher stack. We have 43.5 in the heel, 35.5 in the forefoot. And in my size, the Magic Speed 4 tips the scale at 289 grams, so that's only 8 grams less than the SPECTUR 2. Pretty comparable. The next comparable shoe we have is the Brooks Hyperion Max 2. Now, the Brooks Hyperion Max 2 is a little more expensive. It'll cost $180. And the Hyperion Max 2 has 36 in the heel, 30 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop, and it's a little heavier than my size of the SPECTUR 2. My Hyperion Max 2 weighs in at 315 grams, so that's 18 grams heavier than the SPECTUR 2. And finally, we have the Hoka Mach X2. Now, the Hoka Mach X2 is quite a bit more expensive. This is $190 compared with $170 for the SPECTUR 2. And the Mach X2 has a stack of 44 in the heel, 39 in the forefoot for a 5mm drop. And in my size, the Mach X2 tips the scale at 293 grams, so only 4 grams lighter than the SPECTUR 2. So all in all, there's a lot of comparable shoes out there. But let's start at the top and work our way down. I'm going to hold this up for you. Guys, you can see there's quite a good amount of padding around this heel collar. And that is going to be a good thing because this is a training shoe, right? We don't need that super minimal upper that we would expect on a race day shoe. When we're training, we want a little comfort. And the SPECTUR 2, at least in the heel collar, is going to be a little more comfortable than that Mach X2. So when I put my heel into the SPECTUR 2, I do get a good heel lockdown. I didn't have any heel slip. The heel counter is only semi-rigid, but that's enough to keep your heel in place. I say semi-rigid. I mean, it's pretty rigid, but I can push it in. So there's just a little internal structure there, but it's not a really hard piece of plastic. Oh, gross. There's something sticky on the bottom of my shoe. Guys, generally how these reviews work is that I will finish a run and I will come in, I'll shower, and then I will immediately turn on the camera and start recording to keep my ideas about the shoe fresh. And today I didn't look at whatever is sticky on the bottom of my shoe. Anyway, that's not your problem. Now, for the upper, SALOMON is using a 3D mesh upper, and 3D mesh, that just must be what SALOMON is calling it because it's, you know, it's a regular engineered mesh upper. It is, however, definitely on the soft side. Like, it's nice to touch. Now, of course, you don't feel this when your foot is in the shoe because you're wearing socks, but if you like to touch your shoe like this, then you're gonna like how this feels. I found this 3D mesh upper to be very breathable, like no problems at all. Now, even though the temperatures are getting a little cooler, and by that I mean I'm not soaking my shoes through on every run, but they're still getting a little damp. So living in Florida, even in the wintertime, I still need a very breathable shoe. The SPECTUR 2 is working out well for me. Now, as far as overlays, there really aren't too many. We have the SALOMON on the lateral side, but that's really nothing. SALOMON is not using any SensiFit bands on the SPECTUR 2, so that makes the upper quite pliable. We do have an underlay coming around the toe box, which keeps that upper off your foot. And then there is a very light, clear overlay coming along the eyelet chain just to strengthen that up. The tongue on the SPECTUR 2 is a bit funny. You know, it's definitely more like a training tongue. Like, it's pretty thick, but it's almost like they haven't stuffed it as full as it could be stuffed. So I guess how I would describe it compared with how I have I've described other shoes is that it's a tongue that's medium in thickness. It's not overly done, it's not race day thin, it's just enough. Now the tongue is not gusseted, but there is a big lace loop here on the front, and once my foot was in and I had the tongue positioned right, I didn't experience any tongue migration with the tongue moving around. What I did find though was that when I put my foot in, I did have to make double sure or pay a little more attention than I usually do that the tongue was actually in the correct position, because a couple times the tongue would kind of bunch over on the side, and that's just a product of me putting my foot in too fast and the tongue not being entirely rigid. Like, it's not floppy, but it's just not overly stuffed, right? When I feel it, it just doesn't feel very substantial, and I think that's the reason that it was kind of bunching up a little bit on the sides when I put my foot in. But look, when I paid attention and I spent an extra 2 seconds like being aware of my foot going into the shoe, I didn't experience any issues, and most importantly, there were no issues when I actually got started running. So that's not really a reason to not buy this shoe. Coming down to the outsole, Salomon is using their energy foam. Now this is the same energy foam that Salomon has used for a long time. It's an EVA olefin blend, but here's the thing, Salomon has definitely tweaked this foam because it definitely feels a little softer than it has in the past. Now in the past, most Salomon road shoes have found to me to be just a little firm. I mean, not too firm, not uncomfortably firm, but definitely on the firmer end of the spectrum. You know, in the past they've been on the firmer end of the spectrum where I wouldn't want to take them out for a long run. It seems like they have tweaked the formulation, they've made it just a little softer, and because of that increased softness, the Spectre 2 is actually a shoe that I would take out for a long run. In fact, in my testing I did run 18 miles in it and my feet felt fine. Now the things that places this in that up-tempo plated trainer category is the plate, right? It's in the name. And you can see the plate right here. On my colorway it's red. Now Salomon calls this their Energy Blade, which sounds really fast and really fun. And specifically, this is the Energy Blade CF. CF stands for composite fiber, and basically it's a glass fiber plate, which is a lot like plastic. And that plasticky type of plate is generally what we see in shoes at this price range. I mean, I know that Magic Speed 4 does have a carbon plate, but if I'm totally honest, I don't really feel the difference between a glass fiber plate and a carbon fiber plate when it's in a training shoe. Like, there are some really good glass fiber plates out there. Now you can see that plate running from the heel all the way down to the toe, and that creates a fairly stiff shoe, and that stiff shoe is what we want when we have a plated shoe. Like, we want that stiffness because when we load it, we want that energy to be returned, which will hopefully send us forward a little quicker than we would run without it. And I would say, you know, it works as intended. I don't think the plate or the feeling of propulsion is the most aggressive that I felt, but again, remember, this is a training shoe. We are not always looking for an aggressive feeling in our shoes. And some of you may be thinking, well, Matt, this is an up-tempo training shoe. I want to run fast. I want it to be aggressive. But a shoe that feels really aggressive is oftentimes not as fun to run in on a regular basis. Like, I think it's okay for race day, but if you are taking this shoe out several times a week, a really stiff plate is what gives you that plate fatigue. Now, feeling this stiffness of this shoe, there are definitely stiffer shoes out there. And because this shoe does have some give, I think it's making it a little more friendly to the average runner. Now, I would stop at saying that this would also work as a daily trainer. I mean, unless you really like plated shoes, I don't think I would want to make this my daily driver for going out for my easy runs. I did find in my testing that it definitely works better at those faster paces. Now, it certainly doesn't feel bad at slower paces, and that's probably because Salomon is using their R-camber geometry, which just makes for a very smooth ride. And if we come down to the outsole, Salomon is using their road contour grip, and I didn't find any issues with the grip or traction on wet roads. Of course, on dry roads, it's going to stick like a set of slicks, but it also has pretty good grip in the wet. Now, I'm looking down here, I just noticed this as I'm talking to you about the outsole. I am noticing a little bit of wear here on my heel, of course, no wear up on the forefoot, and this is to be expected. Now, when I generally run at slower paces, I'm going to heel strike a lot more than I do when I'm running at faster paces, so that's why I'm noticing just a little bit of wear here on this rear lateral heel. So, I don't know, based on the mileage that I have in this shoe already and how much rubber there is left, I'm going to say that the Salomon Spectre 2 might last a little less than typical, but of course, that's with my running style. Look, if you are a 4-foot runner, I think these shoes are going to last a lot longer, but me being a heel striker, yeah, if I had to put a prediction, I'm going to say I'd be surprised if these lasted 400 miles. I'd probably say 300 miles. And that's not to say that after I have run 300 miles in these shoes, they're going to be any different. I'm just saying that after around 300 miles, I bet I would have worn through this back corner of outsole rubber. But anyway, it's 2024. Who wants to hold on to a shoe for 300 miles? I'm kidding. That's totally environmentally irresponsible. We should be holding on to our shoes for a long time. But, you know, if you do want to get rid of your shoes after 300 miles, it seems like a good excuse to pick up a new pair. Okay, so how how did this shoe ride? Well, I guess we've already talked about it a little bit, but what I really like is the new formulation of this energy foam. And to be totally honest, I'm not 100% sure that there is a new formulation of energy foam. I've just run a lot of Salomon shoes over the years, and it definitely feels softer. So this new formulation isn't something that Salomon has like pushed out in a marketing release, but it is softer, and I'm definitely here for it. For easy runs, yeah, I think you could run in this shoe at easy paces, but this shoe is made for picking up the pace. Definitely feels better when you land slightly further forward and you can actually use that plate, load it, and send you off in the right direction. Spectre 2 is not as aggressive as some other shoes, but I would say it's more aggressive than some Puma shoes. Take the Puma DV8 Nitro, right? Generally, that's a very friendly shoe for a lot of runners at a lot of paces. I think the Spectre 2 is going to be just a little more aggressive than that, but maybe not as aggressive as the Brooks Hyperion Max 2, or the Magic Speed 4, or the Hoka Mach X2. So yeah, look, all these shoe companies, they don't make it easy for you guys. But one thing's for sure, Salomon has made a pretty solid running shoe with the Spectre 2. And if you like Salomon shoes, if you like how they fit, I think you're going to be very happy with the Spectre 2. Oh, I should have mentioned this earlier, but as far as sizing goes, to me, this does fit true to size. You know, in the Salomon line, I already mentioned that I wear a 12.5. But as far as the toe box, for me, there is plenty of room. Now, this does run on the narrower side, but it's not as narrow as some Adidas shoes, okay? Which is also a big departure from Salomon's of years past when they used to just be like rails. Like even my skinny feet would have a hard time squeezing into them. Now that hasn't been the case in a couple of years, and it's definitely not the case with the Spectre 2. There seems to be a good amount of room in this toe box. But now it's your turn. I want to hear from you. Did you run in the first Spectre? Have you run in any other Salomon road shoes? And are you thinking of picking up a pair of the Salomon Spectre 2? Drop a comment and let me know. And with that, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the Salomon Spectre 2. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.